Ancient Egypt, proof that if you build something big enough, nobody will notice how dumb your ideas were. 1. The pharaoh who fired the Nile. Pharaoh Akhenaten once decided Egypt had too many gods, and apparently too much sense. So he fired them all and promoted just one, the sun. The man literally replaced an entire pantheon with a celestial light bulb and then acted shocked when people got cranky about losing their favorite deity perks. Temples shut down, priests went on strike, and the whole economy collapsed faster than a sandcastle in a flood. Akhenaten even moved the capital to a new city dedicated entirely to his solar obsession, a place so cursed that later pharaohs bulldozed it out of spite. Imagine someone deleting all your apps because they only believe in Google Calendar. That was Egypt for 20 years. 2. The king who crowned a corpse. Egyptian rulers loved ceremony, even when logic begged them to stop. Case in point, Pharaoh Pepi II, who refused to accept his mother's death. When she passed, he ordered the embalmed body dressed in royal regalia and propped up beside him on the throne for meetings. Courtiers had to pretend she was deeply contemplative while her linen-wrapped head bobbled with approval. It's like Weekend at Bernie's, but with more incense and state taxes. Historians call it filial devotion. The rest of us call it a therapy cry for help. 3. The crocodile who got a pyramid. In a civilization where people worshipped everything from cats to dung beetles, one crocodile hit the jackpot. Sobek, the god of the Nile, was so beloved that priests literally built him his own pyramid. Not a temple, a pyramid. They embalmed actual crocodiles in gold jewelry and buried them like royalty. Tourists in ancient times would visit these sacred gator crypts while pretending not to wonder who thought this was a normal use of stone labor. Imagine spending 20 years hauling limestone blocks just to honor something that would eat you if it got the chance. Egypt didn't just blur the line between reverence and insanity, it built a monument on top of it. 4. The pharaoh who invented the world's first spam campaign. Ramses II wasn't just a pharaoh, he was history's original influencer. The man plastered his name on everything: temples, statues, obelisks, kitchenware, probably even the receipt tablets. He had entire walls carved to show his heroic victory at the Battle of Kadesh, which, by the way, ended in a stalemate. Ramses didn't win, he just had better PR. Imagine losing a soccer match 0-0, then buying 400 billboards that say, "World Champion." That's basically how Ramses rolled. And it worked. For centuries, people believed he single-handedly conquered the world. Turns out, fake news isn't new. It's just better carved in stone. 5. The pharaoh who married himself and then argued about it. Egyptians took divine kingship seriously, so seriously that some pharaohs decided they were both husband and wife in spirit. The most committed of the bunch, Hatshepsut, declared herself not just king, but the male incarnation of a god. She wore a fake beard, dressed in men's clothes, and held royal ceremonies where she married her own divine alter ego. Basically, she officiated, attended, and honeymooned all by herself. Her stepson hated it so much, he tried to chisel her out of every monument in Egypt. Which, to be fair, is what happens when your stepmom outbeards you. 6. The pharaoh who invented the first pyramid scheme, literally. Djoser, one of Egypt's earliest kings, wanted a tomb so grand that people would remember him forever. His architect Imhotep delivered, by stacking tombs on top of each other like ancient Lego. Thus, the first pyramid was born. Everyone was so impressed that future pharaohs said, "We want one too," and the construction boom began. For centuries, Egypt basically ran on pyramid FOMO. Thousands of workers spent their lives building massive tombs they'd never be allowed to enter. The reward? Maybe bread and beer. It's the only pyramid scheme in history where the investors were buried instead of broke. 7. The pharaoh who declared war on boredom. When most kings built monuments, Amenhotep III built everything. Palaces, statues, temples. The man's building addiction made Ramses look modest. At one point, he ordered 700 statues of himself just to celebrate being alive. This was not for a military victory or a festival, just his general existence. If Instagram existed back then, Amenhotep would have crashed it with selfies. His over-the-top ego project drained Egypt's treasury and exhausted his workers, but he didn't care. When you think you're a god, budget cuts are for mortals. 8. the pharaoh who taxed the dead. Pharaoh Seti, I looked at Egypt's most sacred institution, the afterlife, and saw a revenue stream. Tomb robbing had become a national pastime, so he decided the solution was more government oversight. He imposed a spiritual service fee. Families had to pay taxes to maintain their relatives' mummies. Can't afford it? Too bad. Your loved one's eternal comfort expired with the payment plan. It's the ancient version of a subscription model. Even in death, Egyptians couldn't unsubscribe. Somewhere in the Duat, their afterlife, an accountant was smiling. 9. The pharaoh who built a tomb he couldn't find. Pharaoh Sneferu was obsessed with being buried in the perfect pyramid, like a guy who keeps remodeling his man cave but never finishes. His first one collapsed because, apparently, geometry wasn't invented yet. The second was built at the wrong angle and came out looking like a sad Dorito, now known as the Bent Pyramid. By the third attempt, he finally nailed it, the Red Pyramid, and promptly died before moving in. Egypt ended up with 3 giant test versions of his ego scattered across the desert, the ancient equivalent of 3 abandoned mansions for one man. Sneferu didn't just build monuments, he built the world's first construction regrets playlist. 10. The pharaoh who tried to outshine the gods and lost to dust. Pharaoh Khufu wanted to be remembered forever, so he ordered the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the world. He succeeded, sort of. The problem was, he built it so massive that everyone else in Egypt had to suffer for decades. Thousands of workers toiled under the sun for his eternal glory, while he sat in luxury, convinced he was outsmarting mortality. Joke's on him. Nobody remembers his face, just the giant rock pile. His pyramid is iconic, but his body? Lost. The man literally built the biggest tomb in history and still misplaced himself. Eternity. 0, dust, 1. 11. The pharaoh who micromanaged his mummies. Ramses III had trust issues, the kind that make your average control freak look chill. He didn't just build his tomb, he planned every single detail of his embalming ceremony before dying. The herbs, the linens, even the exact script priests had to recite. When his advisors questioned the micromanagement, he added those instructions into law. Imagine leaving behind a 200-page Google Doc titled, "How to Bury Me Correctly." His paranoia wasn't totally unfounded. When he finally died, half his family tried to assassinate him mid-funeral. Somewhere in the underworld, he's still checking his spiritual inbox for unauthorized embalming. 12. The pharaoh who weaponized perfume. Cleopatra gets credit for being glamorous, but her ancestor Hatshepsut turned scent into strategy. She literally launched a military expedition for incense. Her ships sailed to the mysterious land of Punt, not for gold or weapons, but for trees that smelled nice. When the fleet returned, she paraded the aromatic cargo through Thebes like a victorious general of fragrance. Egypt's first perfume line was born, and the PR campaign was legendary. Hatshepsut basically said, "Why conquer nations when you can conquer noses?" It's the only time in history that an empire went to war for aromatherapy. 13. The pharaoh who invented the first HR nightmare. Pharaoh Tutankhamun may have been young, but he mastered the art of chaotic management. His court was basically an ancient reality show, advisors fighting for power, priests blackmailing the throne, and servants writing passive-aggressive hieroglyphs on the walls. When Tut died at 19, nobody could even agree on who buried him. Half the officials took credit, and the other half took the gold. The tomb wasn't even meant for him. It was a spare unit they found at the last minute. Imagine dying a king and getting buried in an Airbnb. Tut's reign lasted barely long enough for puberty, but his HR mess lasted for centuries. 14. The pharaoh who tried to build heaven and forgot the floor plan. Pharaoh Khafra, the guy behind the second pyramid at Giza, wanted to one-up his dad Khufu. He built a slightly smaller pyramid but placed it on higher ground so it looked taller. Ancient pettiness, but make it architectural. Then he added the Great Sphinx, a lion with his own face. It was supposed to guard the tomb, but time and sandstorms had other plans. The nose fell off, the paint faded, and future generations had no idea who the statue even was. So Khafra spent eternity as a meme before memes existed. He didn't build heaven, he built history's first optical illusion. 15. The pharaoh who banned bread to look richer. In Egypt, bread was the great equalizer. Everyone ate it. So, one particularly image-conscious pharaoh decided he was too royal for yeast. He banned himself and his court from eating bread so they wouldn't seem common. Instead, he feasted only on honey, figs, and imported delicacies that probably made him pre-diabetic before 30. Meanwhile, peasants watched him pretend starvation was sophistication. Archaeologists later found his mummy with severe tooth decay and gout, proof that vanity literally ate him alive. Sometimes being above the carbs just means dying faster. 16. The pharaoh who outsourced his own religion. When Akhenaten tried to reinvent the entire Egyptian religion, he didn't just make enemies. He made everyone's job confusing. He fired thousands of priests and replaced them with civil servants who had no idea what they were doing. Imagine being a tax collector suddenly told, "Congratulations, you're now in charge of sunrise prayers." Entire rituals were rewritten overnight, and sacred festivals were canceled like bad TV shows. The people revolted quietly by pretending to worship the new god while secretly keeping old statues under their beds. Akhenaten thought he was purifying Egypt. He just created the world's first religious bureaucracy. 17. The pharaoh who invented the ancient internet comment section. Pharaoh Ramses III opened one of history's earliest complaint departments. Literally, citizens could carve grievances into limestone tablets and place them outside temples. The topics? Unpaid wages, stolen donkeys, and bad beer. One entry reads suspiciously like a Yelp review. The barley was weak and the overseer rude. Instead of fixing the system, Ramses III had scribes summarize the complaints, essentially muting the comments. The more things change, the more they stay hieroglyphic. 18. The pharaoh who held a world record in petty revenge. When Thutmose III finally took the throne after being forced to share power with his stepmother Hatshepsut, he unleashed the ancient equivalent of a personal rebrand. He ordered her name chiseled off every monument, erased from every tablet, and even vandalized her statues. The royal sculptors must have loved that job. Hey, remember that 60-foot masterpiece we spent a decade on? Smash it. It was state-sanctioned pettiness on a national scale, and still didn't work. Hatshepsut's name survived anyway. Thutmose erased her from stone, but accidentally engraved himself into history as Egypt's most vindictive interior decorator. 19. The pharaoh who made his pet. The CEO of a temple pharaoh, Ptolemy II, adored his pet cat so much he promoted it, not figuratively, literally. The cat, named Tamia, was given its own temple staff, jewelry, and daily fish rations bigger than most citizens' meals. When it died, the funeral procession shut down half the city. Priests wailed, mourners shaved their eyebrows, and the cat got a marble sarcophagus. Ptolemy called it divine justice. The workers called it Tuesday. Egypt invented corporate worship of animals, and somewhere in the afterlife, Tamia's still running payroll. 20. The pharaoh who tried to erase death with paint, Pharaoh Seti. I was terrified of dying, so he hired teams of artisans to paint the afterlife on his tomb walls in excruciating detail, hoping that when he died, the gods would think he'd already been there. Every wall was a cosmic passport, instructions, passwords, and maps to heaven. The project took decades and drained the treasury. When Seti finally died, grave robbers broke in and stole his gold within weeks. Turns out, no amount of spiritual Photoshop can beat human greed. His tomb still stands today, a giant, expensive cheat sheet for a test he failed anyway. 21. The pharaoh who built a temple to his favorite cow. Forget golden calves. Pharaoh Amenhotep III had an actual cow problem. He declared one particularly plump and gentle cow divine and commissioned an entire shrine for it, complete with servants, jewelry, and daily offerings of honeyed grain. The inscriptions describe the cow as shining with celestial power, which is ancient code for best moo ever. Taxpayers funded this bovine luxury resort, while Amenhotep bragged that the cow's eyes reflected the sun. Translation: Egypt had its first official royal pet influencer. Somewhere, the priests must have thought, "We trained decades for this, to babysit a holy heifer." 22. The pharaoh who turned his tomb into a storage unit. Pharaoh Sisenus, I believe that you could, in fact, take it all with you. His tomb was stuffed with so much random stuff that archaeologists later described it as part burial chamber, part royal garage sale. Gold sandals, spare thrones, half-eaten bread loaves, even a box labeled miscellaneous. It's as if King Tut's tomb had a junk drawer. Sisenus's idea of eternal comfort was apparently being surrounded by clutter. If reincarnation's real, he came back as that relative who can't throw away expired coupons. 23. The pharaoh who designed the world's first haunted house. Pharaoh Amenemhet III built the Labyrinth of Hawara, a colossal structure with over 3,000 rooms, endless corridors, and secret traps. He wanted it to guard his tomb and confuse grave robbers. It worked a little too well. People got lost, workers disappeared, and even ancient tour guides refused to enter. Herodotus later visited and described it as beyond human comprehension, which is a polite Greek way of saying, "This place is a nightmare." Amenemhet's genius plan to protect his body accidentally created Egypt's first supernatural tourist attraction. Forget pyramids, this guy built the ancient version of a cursed IKEA. 24. The pharaoh who tried to control the weather. During a devastating drought, Pharaoh Djedkare decided the Nile just needed some motivation. He ordered a team of priests to stand on its banks and chant productivity spells at the river until it flooded again. Spoiler, it didn't. When the magic didn't work, he blamed disloyal fish spirits and demanded the priests build statues underwater to appease them. Thousands of man-hours went into sculpting stone catfish offerings that immediately sank and vanished. Egypt didn't get water, but it did get the world's first underwater art installation and the earliest documented case of government overreach into meteorology. 25. The pharaoh who hosted the first pyramid party. Pharaoh Sneferu, yes, our favorite overachiever, decided to celebrate finishing one of his many pyramids with an epic party for 20,000 guests. There was beer, dancing, roasted oxen, and an entire orchestra made of harps and flutes carved from ivory. The invitation list included nobles, priests, and every random relative who could spell pharaoh. The ancient gossip tablets claim Sneferu laughed for 7 days and 7 nights, which either means he had the best time ever or the world's longest hangover. It's comforting to know the first recorded frat party happened in 2600 BC, just with more gold and fewer red solo cups. 26. The pharaoh who invented the ancient job scam. During the Middle Kingdom, one clever ruler introduced a new work lottery. Citizens were told that anyone could win a government job if they donated grain to the temples. Sounds generous, right? Except the lottery was rigged. Every winner turned out to be a cousin of the vizier. When people started questioning it, the royal scribes called it divine selection, basically nepotism with extra steps. Egyptians didn't just invent civilization, they invented HR corruption so advanced it could have run for office. 27. The pharaoh who tried to build an island out of sand. Pharaoh Necho II had one goal: create a floating palace in the middle of the Nile. The problem? He didn't understand buoyancy. He ordered tons of sand and rock shipped to the river, confident it would rise upon the waters. Spoiler, it didn't rise, it sank instantly. Workers spent months dumping material into the river until it formed nothing but a shallow sandbar. Necho called it a temporary setback. Historians called it the dumbest construction project until the Titanic. Even the priests stopped blessing his projects after that. 28. The pharaoh who built a temple to himself. Twice Ramses II strikes again. The man's ego had an expansion pack. He already had one giant temple at Abu Simbel featuring 4 65-foot-tall statues of himself, but that wasn't enough. So he built a second one next door for his wife Nefertari, which also featured, surprise, more statues of himself. He literally upstaged his own wife in her own temple. The inscription reads, "For the beloved queen whom the sun rises to honor." But visually it screams, Ramses II, starring Ramses II, directed by Ramses II. It's ancient architecture's way of saying this relationship had no room for a second ego. 29. The pharaoh who turned gold into garbage. Pharaoh Thutmose IV wanted to impress foreign dignitaries, so he commissioned golden chariots so heavy they couldn't move. Each one weighed nearly a ton. Beautiful, useless bling on wheels. When the visiting kings arrived, the royal parade consisted of 20 servants pretending to push these immovable status symbols, while others fanned them dramatically. One foreign ambassador reportedly described it as a fine display of stationary excellence. Egypt had officially invented the luxury car that couldn't start. Somewhere in the desert, an engineer sighed, "We could have just painted wood." 30. The pharaoh who invented the first loyalty program for tomb robbers. During the economic downturn of the New Kingdom, one desperate pharaoh tried to stop grave robbing by turning it into an official job. He offered former thieves legal positions as tomb inspectors, responsible for guarding the same treasures they used to steal. Within a week, the thefts doubled. Officials blamed divine misfortune, but everyone knew the guards were basically giving themselves 5-star Yelp reviews while looting on the side. Egypt didn't just have corruption, it had professionalized it. It's the ancient equivalent of hiring hackers to run your cybersecurity and being shocked when you get hacked. 31. The pharaoh who turned his army into a construction crew, Pharaoh Pepi. I thought Egypt didn't need wars anymore, just better infrastructure. So he reassigned half his military to pyramid duty. These were trained soldiers now ordered to stack limestone instead of slaying enemies. Morale dropped instantly. Archaeologists even found graffiti on the walls reading, "This is not what we trained for." When neighboring Nubia heard Egypt's army was busy hauling rocks, they immediately invaded. Pepi's Great Peace Initiative ended in chaos, confusion, and one very ironic battlefield, the construction site itself. Turns out, replacing swords with chisels isn't a great defense strategy. 32. The pharaoh who declared his birthday a mandatory holiday. Pharaoh Amenhotep II was so proud of himself that he made his own birthday a national event. Every citizen had to celebrate. Attendance was literally written into law. Workers got time off only to attend parades praising his divine youth, even when he was pushing 60. Bakers were forced to make cakes shaped like his face. One ancient letter complains, "We have run out of flour and patience." By year 10, people faked illnesses to skip the festivities. It was history's first birthday burnout, the kind where you can't RSVP no without risking eternal damnation. 33. The pharaoh who tried to email the gods, in stone. During the reign of Ramses IV, the royal scribes were ordered to carve massive stone letters addressed directly to the gods. These weren't prayers, they were literal correspondence tablets with headers like, "To the great Osiris, CC all deities concerned." Each contained detailed updates on Egypt's taxes, grain, and general vibes. The project required thousands of pounds of limestone and months of carving. Historians believe the gods never replied, though the priests later claimed the wind's whisper counted as a response. Congratulations, Egypt. You invented spam mail 3,000 years early. 34. The pharaoh who held the first celebrity funeral tour. When a beloved bull god named Apis died, Pharaoh Psammetichus arrived. Threw a funeral so lavish it made royal burials look cheap. Thousands attended, musicians played non-stop for days, and the embalmed bull was paraded through multiple cities like an A-list celebrity. People tossed flowers, cried hysterically, and bought commemorative amulets. It was the original influencer merch drop, except the influencer was a cow. When the new Apis calf was found, Psammetichus announced it would continue the divine content, effectively inventing the sequel. Egypt was running a full franchise before Hollywood even existed. 35. The pharaoh who invented the world's first pyramid insurance policy. Pharaoh Ramesses IX faced a national crisis. Grave robbers kept raiding royal tombs faster than they could be sealed. His solution was bureaucratic brilliance and stupidity rolled into one, a pyramid insurance program. Citizens could pay taxes into a fund that guaranteed the gods would avenge any looted tombs. Basically, divine crime coverage. The slogan, inscribed on papyrus, read something like, "Rest eternal, we handle the aftermath." Spoiler, no refunds, no results, and no surviving robbers brought to justice. But hey, the paperwork was immaculate. Egypt may not have invented modern insurance, but it definitely invented fine print. 36. The pharaoh who tried to tax the moon. Pharaoh Ptolemy IX looked up at the full moon one night and decided it looked a little too prosperous. So, in a moment of fiscal genius, he declared a lunar tax. Every month, citizens had to pay a small offering in honor of the moon's harvest light. Essentially, he charged rent for moonlight. Priests loved it, astronomers hated it, and peasants just prayed for cloudy nights. Historians later called it the most uncollectible tax in history. Somewhere, an accountant probably asked, "Do we file this under celestial income or lunacy?" 37. The pharaoh who invented the mummy makeover show. Pharaoh Amenhotep IV believed beauty wasn't just for the living, it was for the eternally dead. He ordered all royal mummies to be refreshed every 10 years, complete with new linens, perfumes, and face paint. Some tombs became annual spa retreats where priests would re-wrap mummies like ancient beauty influencers, muttering prayers that sounded suspiciously like product slogans. One priest's journal even reads, "Her Majesty now smells divine again." Egypt had invented corpse couture. Somewhere, Tutankhamun's mummy was silently screaming, "Let me rest, I've been exfoliated enough." 38. The pharaoh who hosted the first divine talent show. Pharaoh Ramesses III once asked his priests to prove which gods were real by holding a divine contest. Temples from across Egypt had to demonstrate their deity's power on stage, levitating objects, making omens, or performing miracles. It was essentially Egypt's got gods. Winners got bigger temples, losers were quietly defunded. One temple claimed their statue sneezed on command. Another bragged that their sacred cat could balance on one paw. Ramesses III watched like a smug Simon Cowell of eternity. Historians say the contest united religion and entertainment. Translation: Divine Karaoke Night. 39. The pharaoh who gave his statue a pension. When Pharaoh Amenemhat IV had a massive statue of himself erected, he didn't stop there. He assigned it a salary. The statue officially received daily food offerings, wine rations, and 2 attendants for conversation. Treasury records even show grain payments to the living likeness of His Majesty. Meanwhile, his soldiers were starving. Imagine being an unpaid worker watching a rock version of your boss get fed better than you. Egypt didn't just build monuments to ego, it gave them employee benefits. 40. The pharaoh who invented the cursed warranty. To stop thieves from raiding tombs, Pharaoh Ramesses IX authorized the world's first written curse policy. Every coffin and temple door came engraved with something like, "If you touch this, your soul will be eaten by hippos." It worked for about 5 minutes. Then robbers kept stealing anyway. Some even carved under the curses, writing replies like, "Worth it." Eventually, officials started issuing extended curses with bonus afterlife punishments. It's proof that the ancient world invented not only warranties, but also trolling. 41. The pharaoh who tried to outlaw dreams. Pharaoh Merneptah was sick of his citizens claiming prophetic dreams. Every time something went wrong, someone would say, "The gods told me so." So Merneptah made it illegal to discuss dreams in public, punishable by flogging. For a decade, Egypt became a dreamless nation, at least officially. Of course, people just whispered their visions in secret like it was ancient gossip. Eventually, even Merneptah's priests ignored the law when he started having nightmares himself. That's right, the man who banned dreams lost sleep over breaking his own rule. Classic management problem. 42. The pharaoh who turned his palace into a zoo. Pharaoh Thutmose III wanted the world's first garden of living wonders. So he filled his palace with exotic animals: giraffes, leopards, monkeys, even a rhinoceros imported from Africa. He called it the House of Life. His neighbors called it the House of Screaming. The royal halls became a chaotic jungle. Monkeys wrecked scrolls, elephants smashed doors, and the rhino tried to eat a throne. Eventually, the animals escaped into the palace courtyard, where soldiers spent days chasing flamingos through marble halls. Thutmose described it as divine harmony. Everyone else described it as a nightmare petting zoo. 43. The pharaoh who tried to erase gravity. Pharaoh Nectanebo II was obsessed with magic and science, mostly the kind that ignored both. He gathered Egypt's top engineers and magicians to make stones float. Their goal: build temples without workers by using divine magnetism. The experiment involved hundreds of priests chanting while pushing blocks uphill with copper poles. It failed instantly. The stones didn't float, they just rolled back down, crushing the high priest's sandals. Nectanebo called it a partial success and declared that gravity was a foreign curse. Egypt had just invented the ancient version of "we meant to do that." 44. The pharaoh who built a temple to his own sneeze. One day, Pharaoh Horemheb sneezed during a royal ceremony, and a priest, desperate to flatter him, declared it a sign from the heavens. Instead of laughing it off like a normal person, Horemheb ordered a temple built to commemorate the breath of life. The temple featured carvings of him mid-sneeze, showering the land with divine wind. Worshippers even left offerings of scented oils to purify the royal airways. Somewhere, an architect stood there holding blueprints, wondering if history would ever forgive him. It didn't. 45. The pharaoh who mummified his dinner. Pharaoh Seti I loved duck so much, he decided he wanted to take it with him to the afterlife. literally. Archaeologists discovered dozens of roasted ducks, perfectly wrapped and embalmed like mini mummies in his tomb. Some even had name tags like "Beloved Goose Number 3." This man looked at the gateway to eternity and said, "Can't go hungry." It's the oldest known example of takeout, 3,000 years old and still overcooked. Historians say Seti's tomb smelled like heaven. I say it smelled like eternal leftovers. 46. The pharaoh who sued a tomb. In one of the most absurd chapters of Egyptian history, Pharaoh, Ptolemy X filed an official decree accusing a rival dynasty's tomb of stealing divine glory. Yes, he legally sued architecture. He claimed the rival pyramid was too magnificent and therefore an offense to royal legacy. The case went to Egypt's high priests, who ruled in favor of both parties being eternally honored. Essentially, they declared a tie between a man and a building. Ptolemy responded by commissioning a statue of himself standing on top of a miniature pyramid. Legal pettiness, eternalized. 47. The mummy who won a lawsuit. In 1906, long after Egypt's golden age, the British Museum was sued by a mummy. Well, technically, by descendants of the priest whose body they'd stolen. The plaintiffs argued the mummy had been wrongfully displaced and that his sacred rest was violated. The court laughed it off, but public outrage forced the museum to issue a written apology to the mummy. That's right, a 3,000-year-old corpse received better customer service than most airline passengers. Somewhere in the afterlife, the priest probably whispered, "Told you I'd get the last word." 48. The pharaoh who tried to become a god and got demoted to furniture. Our finale belongs to Pharaoh Akhenaten, Egypt's ultimate divine diva. After forcing everyone to worship his sun god, he built an entire golden throne depicting himself as the cosmic center of the universe. He declared that when he died, he'd become the eternal light of creation. Fast forward a few centuries. Tomb raiders melted his golden relics down and turned them into household ornaments. The self-proclaimed living sun became someone's coffee table. If irony had a pharaoh, it was Akhenaten, the man who aimed for immortality and ended up holding fruit bowls. And there you have it. 48 times ancient Egypt proved that absolute power and basic logic can't share the same pyramid. Which one deserves the royal crown of stupidity? You decide. Before you escape this video like a guilty politician, check out our other channel, Idiopedia. Even dumber, even funnier. You'll thank me later.